Are you good and in a place where you can talk freely?
Yes, and I apologize. I did not. I did make a couple phone calls today, but I didn't hear which agency you were from.
That is absolutely fine. I just don't like to give too much information.
Oh, okay.
Before I make sure somebody
Who
is
you're
in a
talking
safe
to.
place to talk.
Right. Makes sense.
And I work for Oregon Department of Human Services in Eugene,
Okay.
in Lane County.
Okay.
And I work for the administration office here. I understand you were making a request for records.
Yes.
And I was asked to give you a call and at least get you connected with somebody who will be responsive to your request. Okay?
Oh, okay, perfect.
Before I do that, I always like to make sure I'm talking to the correct person.
Okay.
Okay? What's your middle initial?
L.
Thank you. And your date of birth? Forwarded says that you're interested in your records from 2014. Is that correct?
I actually thought it was 2012 to 2013. It's I didn't know they were called this, but apparently they're called TADVS records.
Yeah, that's when somebody has been in an unsafe situation and they receive assistance.
Right. So for me specifically, it was a situation where I was married for 16 years and he worked and I didn't, and there was like abandonment and he threatened he would have owed me alimony and everything, and he kept threatening to kill me, and it was just ongoing, so I of course ended up on assistance. But then I kept before, I believe it was before 2019 maybe, you had to go through your caseworker to get your records. And these people would not give me my case records. Like, it was like quite a battle.
So far, Nancy.
What's that?
Who have you talked to so far, just so I don't send it back to the same people who weren't helpful to you?
Okay. So let me be a little bit more clear, or just, I apologize if it takes me like a whole 5 minutes to explain this, but I promise you it'll maybe start to make sense.
Okay.
So back in 2012 and 2013, that's when the actual divorce, we moved into separate places and he kept coming over and harassing me, and I called the police, and the police he was dating someone who was connected to the 911 call center, which of course I didn't know. I found this out later, but police would kind of laugh, never take it serious, never, but I trying to get those reports, even 4 years later or so, it was just, it was quite a battle the whole time. Which I'm not exactly sure on, other than I know they did change the rules, like as far as DHS in 2019, I believe, where you could go and actually make those requests yourself online and speak directly. So since then, and since I've been making those requests online, I've gotten a lot of, access to getting those records has been simpler. But specifically the records I'm just requesting right now, I first requested online like you normally do, and they kept saying they need to talk to a caseworker about it, which for me...
That's because it's TADVS.
Okay, so I didn't know that, but that kind of concerned me, of course, because the trouble I ran into in Roseburg.
What happens, and I think this will make total sense to you, is when somebody is in a situation where they've been unsafe, there's all kinds of things that happen. And so we don't like to just release information because first of all, it's highly sensitive, and it could make someone unsafe again.
Right, depending on the situation.
Releasing the records?
Right.
That makes sense?
Right.
So you're not entitled to get them. It's just you have to have somebody look at them, and like I was doing with you, make sure we're giving it to the right person and not creating an unsafe situation.
Okay, right. Because, and to me, I'm not really sure what giving someone, to be honest, I don't really understand what fighting anyone on giving the records for any reason. To me, I'm not sure. I hear what you're saying, but for me, what happened is that, length of time has gone on without that explanation and without retrieving those records, and years have gone on and me not, being confused about it. But in the meantime, my children... abuse happened with my children. Like, I had custody, but he wouldn't return them, and then they'd miss school past what's legal, and I'd report it, and it would come back being my report's unfounded. And it always bothered me, like, how is it unfounded? So I kept trying to get, my records to prove it, which I have finally, after all these years of trying, I did get quite a bit of these records. And so it baffles my mind, like, how were they, to me, it must mean they did nothing to actually prove that it was unfounded. They were just, So, but at this point, I'm just looking for the DVS records, and I did speak to Ben Johnson in Cottage Grove, who was the manager.
Great.
And so he said, he talked to me about the two records, they were the two payments for the DVS records, but he said he couldn't see any other notes, and he needed, and you maybe just explain to me what that length of time's been about. So when you say creating an unsafe situation, do you, like,
let me make up a totally...
There you go. That would help me understand it. Yeah, comprehend it.
Yeah. Let's say a person has been in an abusive situation and escapes it. And their abuser is really mad at them. And so they start getting their current girlfriend to call in and try to get information about whereabouts. And that's all in our system because we had to make payments.
Right.
But we're not just going to give it out because we need to understand better that we're not creating a situation where an abuser is going to track down somebody because they're mad at them. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess it doesn't. Okay, so can I give you a totally fake, made-up situation and just for comprehension? Okay, so say you give me these records and I post them public to my social media, which, as far as I've checked into, is like Kathy Cross down here at the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. I've asked her about what information, like, because I had concerns. I suddenly realized, your name and your phone number and your address is on all this information. And anybody, I realized, could call up and get anybody's records, like police records. And so I even called her and I said, Kathy, is that true? That do you change the record at all to give it to anybody? And she said, no, they get the whole record. It would take a situation specific, like maybe you had like a child underage and there was like you're speaking like a DVS for them to alter the records, or maybe they would be refused at that point. I'm not sure. But, so I said, well, what if I post them, that person posts them publicly? Is that legal? And just so, as far as I was interpreting the law, I was reading to her and we both interpreted it that it is, it's legal to do that. A person would then have to sue you for they would have to have damages from that and then sue you for those damages.
And just to interrupt for a moment, the rules and laws that govern police records are really different than the laws and rules that govern release of the information we have for our programs.
And so this is also...
Our rules are a lot tighter.
Okay. And so that brings me to my next question. So when it's a situation where you are dealing with DVS records and police records and stuff, so I'm having a hard time getting those records, but the police should be, or sheriff or whatever, should have an easy time getting those records, right? Always, or no, or...
To get our records, the only people we can release records to are the person whose records they belong to, or we need to be ordered by a judge to release them to somebody else. We cannot release law enforcement.
Oh, okay. So if I call a sheriff and I say, Sheriff, I have custody, I have like 80-20 custody and my ex hasn't brought me back the papers, he can't go on his computer on his screen right in front of him and go like look up my thing and see that I have DVS records. This whole time I thought they must have access to that. That would make no sense. I did not know that. Okay, that actually does explain a lot. Okay, so they don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't know, and we won't give them to them unless the judge orders us to. If we gave them to you because you were entitled to them, or anybody, not just you, and you chose to give it to law enforcement, well, that's your business.
Okay, and so you would have, this whole time I thought they automatically had records to it. If I'm complaining, hey, he's not giving me my kid, to me it was like there must be something where just because I can't go look it up, they must be able to. So it makes errors on their end a little bit more. I can see how there's been errors without there being a way for them to see that. I would have to give it to them, according to you. So, okay, that actually is helpful. So, and so, and because I didn't know this, I should just ask you, so because this record is different in your rules, am I legally not allowed to post this? Like what, like the paper itself, like say I cross out personally I would cross out phone numbers and stuff, but, or
I was
like.
going to say, if you got your record, I mean, once you see them, you'll see we talk in abbreviations and computer codes, because that's just how we write stuff in records, because it makes sense to us. But if you posted it, that's your business.
Okay.
If somebody said to us, what is ODHS doing posting these records, we would have documented we provided those records to you.
Right, so you would know I'm the one who posted it. You'd be like, this lady can't get these records through any other. She had to be her, or somebody could stole them from her house, I guess. But in general, it would be the person.
But it's it's pretty far fetched. And like
right,
you said, once you see some of our records, you kind of go.
There's only a couple of options.
About this.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
It's like we made this computer entry using this code.
Right, and then and for me, just to move a little bit forward, it makes sense because if I posted it, it's my record. The person would have to prove damages. Well, how were you damaged by me posting my evidence that I was harmed? You know what I mean? That I suffered some harm or something. You know what I mean? So it saves. I see where it reduces slap lawsuits or whatever they call that.
Yeah, I mean the whole intent of the federal rules, because that's what we're governed by. It's not even state rules; it's federal rules.
Federal rules. That makes sense.
Is to create a safe way for people who need help to get help without worrying that we're gonna, spread their personal information all over the community.
Right. So this is only a level of extra, whatever you want to call it, that you go through for TADVS records. There's really no, it's just.
So I'm going to give you a general answer to illustrate the challenge in giving TADVS records. Depending upon the situation, and I don't know your situation, I have no ability to look it up. I work for the administration office, okay?
Right.
But in general, what our rules say is that if we're working with somebody who is not safe, and they are concerned that someone could access our system because they work for our agency, we don't put that information in our systems. We write it on paper.
Right.
Okay? And that paper is locked.
Right.
And so it's just an added level of caution and security when people have told us they're in an unsafe situation.
So, and that would come in like for me, I was trying to battle this whole, because of course I didn't understand every law and stuff like that, but when my children are now 21 and 25, they're adults, so there's no concern for their, I mean, I can, when they're under 18, I understand that it makes a different rule. To me, I would think there'd be different rules, or their custody could come up into play or whatever. But in this case, I feel like I'm there's been so many errors that were made in my case where things weren't handled correctly, and I'm trying to figure out why. And so I'm getting, this is providing more reasons as to why. So I appreciate you walking me through that process.
Sure. So do you have a need to get some of these old records from, we would have to request them from an archive?
Okay.
Because they're so old?
Okay, so what it is like I said, in my case, I continuously reported the abuse to my caseworkers in Roseburg. And then I continued, and to the police, which I now know they couldn't see the records, but, and no one would do anything. And I don't know what, for me personally, it's like, I'm not sure what I could have done more to prevent. Just from a few classes I've taken, one time I became a foster parent, you have to take class for a day. It was a long time ago and everything. But just the things I've learned from that, they told us if you have a case where for me, in my case, my ex-husband should have been established with DVS records as being abusive. So when he's coming in to make a report saying, to them that's really outlandish, and I'm telling them they're not giving me my child back, I don't understand how they didn't respond and do something about it. Or communicate with the police or communicate with me better. It was always just unfounded. So for me, And I had damages because my children kept believing that their dad had the right to like do these things against legal, like the custody papers and stuff, or parenting plan. And so the records are to prove that, this did happen. I was trying to get you to follow these procedures, which I was told they're supposed to have in place. And I don't know why they weren't being followed. So for me, it's just the one like missing puzzle piece that goes into where I'm showing.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
It does. And so let me ask you this. You talked about records for TADVS, which is a program administered through the Self-Sufficiency Program.
Uh-huh.
But then you're talking about reports of abuse and being unfounded, which is part of our child welfare system.
Correct.
Two very different systems, two different sets of records. The two don't communicate.
Okay.
So if, for example, you told an SSP case worker or case manager about abuse, they would be obligated as a mandatory reporter to make a report to child welfare. Child welfare would take that information, go through their process of investigation, and make a determination. That's where that word unfounded would come in.
Okay.
But the records of that report don't live in SSP, they live in child welfare.
Okay, so according to what you're saying to me, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that you're saying, like, say I report in 2019 or whatever, there's a child welfare thing with child welfare. Those child welfare caseworkers working on the current report are not able to access my TADVS records?
Correct.
Well, that does not make any sense. How are they able to make a determination based off, unless they're accessing those records?
Yeah, and what they do is they look and see within the child welfare system, have there been prior reports of abuse or neglect? And they can see those. The SSP caseworker would have made the report to child welfare, so that report should have been recorded in the child welfare system.
Huh.
And when I say system, I mean computer system.
Right. Okay. Well.
And so the TADVS, that's separate because it's not related necessarily to any child abuse. People experience unsafe situations all the time, and it doesn't mean there's child abuse
Different
involved.
form. Yeah, I do realize it comes in all different shapes and forms.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, okay. So I see. So I would like to work on maybe like down the road with the governor's advocacy office about, of course I'm trying to get these records, but putting it all together and then showing them exactly how this led to my children were more abused instead of them being protected. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand how your system works. So as a client, I would like for your system to reflect my needs. So just, obviously speaking about stuff like that maybe changes that could be made and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think working through the Governor's Advocacy Office is a great way because they have a lot of information available that I probably don't have, where they can explain what is possible, what's not possible. But in general, people who access services, whether they're through child welfare or through SSP or any other program, have rights. And one of the rights they have is to review and receive an explanation of what our decisions are based on.
Right. And so I did figure out, which I will just tell you, because you said you work in Eugene, and that way, in case you have someone from Roseburg and they tell you this, maybe I have heard that before. But so what I was able to figure out in this whole last 10 plus years of going through from my divorce happened in 2012 or 2013. So since then, I found out that Roseburg themselves were not giving people, and it was like, so this would be your self-sufficiency side is not giving anybody their exemptions. So they always wanted us to do a work program. And so say like in the reason how I figured this out was there's multiple family members, and through catching them and how they treat other family members, that's how I found out. Oh, because I didn't know, do they hate me? Do they put, like, is it me? Am I making a mistake? Am I doing something wrong? And then through discovering multiple cases, I realized this is something that's happening in Roseburg through the self-sufficiency side. Them not giving the exemptions to people, like an abuse exemption for, like, I don't need to do your work program because I'm busy trying to deal with abuse, get abuse records and all this kind of stuff, Or when it came to my niece, they came here to my house to speak to my niece who was staying here at the time, and she has children under the age of 6, and that's an exemption. And he came to my house and he said to me, yeah, we're here looking for her because she's supposed to do her work program. And it was very jarring the way he treated me, and it was a very uncomfortable situation. And so that through all these things that kept happening, that's what I was able to discover. And so that led me down a path of 10 years of just being, they would come to our house, this happened to me several times too, and say, you're not doing our work program, it would never ever made sense to me. Anyways, I just wanted to fill you in on a little extra information.
Okay, well, I appreciate you sharing your experience with me.
Okay. I appreciate you helping me understand some of the things I did not understand.
Sure. Is there anything I can do for you?
No.
I don't want to take up your afternoon.
I was just going to say, do I need to do anything else, or should I just expect to receive them in the mail soon, or do I need to, reapply?
That's what I wanted to ask about, because what I have is the request that I'm trying to respond to is, well, my thing that I got sent says 2014, but you've corrected that to 2012.
I think it was 2012 or 2013. It only happened the one time, and it was definitely early, so you won't.
Asking specifically for your TA-DBS records?
Yes.
All right, and so they're old and they're archived, and so what I'm going to do next, just so you know, is I'm going to find a policy analyst who has the ability to find those records and prepare them and mail them to your P.O. box.
Okay, that's perfect.
Okay?
Okay.
And I'm not going to give you a time frame because I have no idea what their workload's like, but I can tell you that that's my next step.
Okay, and just so that I don't want to assume anything, so you don't want to give me a time frame, but is 2 weeks okay, or should it be more like 30 days, do you think, before I should bother to...
I'm going to go out there because I honestly, Nancy, I have no idea.
Okay, I understand that.
Let's say 30 days,
okay.
And hopefully you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Okay, that's fine. And if you can, this phone number is good for any messages if you need to contact me about something, or you just want to say, hey, no luck, or, whatever, just so I know. I would appreciate
I'm going to pass it on to someone else.
Oh, okay.
I will get this 541-623-1010 number.
Yes, okay.
To the policy analyst who will be doing the research, and then I will ask them for those dates that you provided, the program you provided, and you'll be getting SSP TA-DBS records, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
Got it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.